Happy Friday, everybody. I'm really excited for today because it's not going to be too much work for you, but it's really, really important work that you're going to be doing. You get to evaluate your own writing, which is the best way to grow and improve as a writer. So we are going to be looking at a couple sample essays today on the timed right prompt that you did on Tuesday. And then you're just going to use those samples to kind of guide how you look at your own and see how you did and what you can improve upon for the next one that you do. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen with you if you just want to open up today's assignment. The tab I have open right now is just the actual prompt that you guys had, because I'll kind of briefly go over that with you, but I don't want to go over the whole text with you. I'll just kind of talk about it as we go into the sample essays. But I just want to at least look at the prompt itself, since we didn't really debrief that together at all. So on June 11, 2004, Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, delivered the following eulogy to the American people in honor of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan, with whom she had worked closely. Read the eulogy carefully, then in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies she uses to convey her message. Okay, so that really gives you everything about the rhetorical situation. What's kind of nice, you definitely have the clear specific audience here. It's to the American people. And the fact that it's a eulogy tells you it's really just honoring, when you give a eulogy at somebody's funeral or after they've passed, you're really just honoring that legacy that they had in their life. So I think that kind of gives you a really good understanding of the purpose, wanting to honor the life that Reagan had lived and his impact on the world. So we'll go ahead, like I said, open up today's assignment here. Instructions. Okay, so I attached this slideshow for you to kind of go through. You did it. You did your timed right. Honestly, finishing it is half the battle. Just being able to complete that full essay in 45 minutes is a victory in its own, so you guys should feel super proud of that. But now it's time to check yourself, see how you did. So we're going to use these rubric slides to kind of guide how we evaluate the sample essays, and then look at your own essay and then reflect on what you learned through the form, which that Google form is the only thing you're turning into me today. So please make sure you do it. I know sometimes I have the Google form in addition to an assignment, and not everyone turns in the Google form too, but today that's your whole thing. So just make sure you do that piece. Okay, so we have two samples here that you're gonna look at. I wanted you to look at one that's an amazing, you can think of it as a 5 or 6 on the rubric. Ideally it would be a 6, but I can't say for sure because it wasn't officially turned into College Board. But 2A is from one of my former students. I didn't use the one from College Board. Here, I'm going to open it for you. Because if we look at 2A on College Board, the handwriting is a little difficult to read. I can read it because, teacher, you have to get used to reading terrible handwriting. But I know that in the past when I've given this sample to students, they really struggle to read it and know what it's saying in the first place because of the handwriting. So I thought I didn't want to make that too difficult for you guys. The other thing is that even though 2A scored really high, from College Board, it's kind of like a non-traditional structure that we normally don't see. It doesn't really have an intro paragraph. It kind of jumps straight into the body paragraph, which you could still do and score well on the rubric. It's just you have to be a little bit more advanced to be able to pull that off. So it's just not the way I normally like to instruct. But honestly, if you want to see something that's a little bit different but still successful, feel free to read this sample 2A as well on your own time. But again, the handwriting was just kind of tough and the structure was a little bit different than what we're used to. So that's why I wanted you guys to read one of my former students from 2016. She was an incredible writer. And so we're going to take a look at hers together. So hers is the amazing, 5 or 6 out of 6. And then sample 2B, which you will look at the College Board sample for that one because the handwriting's a lot better. That's kind of more your 4 on the rubric, maybe even a 3, 3-4 range on the rubric. It's good, they got it, but it falls short a little bit. So that way you can kind of see, most of you aren't so low that no one's really below a 3 here. You're getting that thesis point, you're getting some evidence and commentary points. So you're probably either going to be at this 2B level or this 2A level, or maybe you're somewhere in between. So that's why I wanted you to look at those two, compare it to your own, and then reflect. So just to kind of quickly go through and remind you, so we're looking that this essay earns the thesis point in terms of like clearly talking about the rhetorical situation, focusing on that author's purpose and including rhetorical choices. Then we want to make sure that the body paragraphs move chronologically, that they're deeply analyzing those choices in the thesis. They're providing short quotes woven into it, and the focus is on the commentary. Why the author made the choice, how it advances the purpose, and how it impacts the specific audience, in this case, the American people. We want to use those strong rhetorical verbs when talking about what the speaker is trying to do. So you're going to notice those in the essay. And then in terms of sophistication, again, that deep understanding of the rhetorical situation will earn that point, noticing some complexities or tensions in the text, or just being very eloquent in terms of the writing. So we can talk about which we think that sample 2A might have done to earn that sophistication point. Okie dokie. All right, let's go ahead and just from here, go ahead and open up this sample essay, and we will take a look together. Just so you know, the student actually did end up earning a 4 on her AP test, so that's good news. So you know it has to be pretty good. All right, so on June 11, 2004, former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Margaret Thatcher, gave a touching eulogy in honor of former President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. I just want to note that she really took that directly from the prompt, but then she added in this word touching, so it makes it a little bit different. She's like honing in a little bit more on the text and that sort of thing. So Thatcher's purpose was to honor his legacy by conveying how much Reagan's presidency amidst the Cold War, as well as his overall optimistic spirit, influenced the nation and the world. Throughout the eulogy, Thatcher applies a reverent and grateful tone, recounting the experiences of the audience's former president in order to evoke feelings of gratitude and pride in those American citizens listening. To effectively accomplish her purpose, Thatcher also juxtaposes Reagan's personality with the context of the work, lists how Reagan went above expectations, and employs parallel structure to emphasize his accomplishments. Okay, so I want to just take a second to pause after the intro to kind of debrief this with you guys. I think already what's jumping out to me is the deep understanding of the rhetorical situation, potentially earning that sophistication point. You can see here she really does a nice job going off of the purpose that's given in the prompt, but like taking it even deeper with this idea of honoring the legacy. That wasn't explicitly stated in the prompt, but could be determined after reading the passage and thinking about what a eulogy really does. It's very specific in terms of context and talking about Reagan's presidency during the Cold War, which was mentioned in the text too. So even if you haven't gotten to that part in your history classes yet, just kind of using what you read in the text will kind of help you dig into the context a little bit. Really a nice job here talking about rhetorical choices in terms of tone being reverent, very respectful and grateful. Already jumping into the impact on the audience of American citizens. Okay, and then yeah, more talk about the specific rhetorical strategies here with juxtaposition, listing what he did, and using parallel structure even. And don't feel like you needed to do something as specific as parallel structure. Remember, this student was in 2016 when there was a lot more focus on really specific devices like that. But don't feel like you need to do that. If you did like appeal to credibility and things like that, that's a really effective choice to analyze. So when looking at your own writing, you didn't need to identify the same rhetorical choices. Those could have been anything you noticed in the text, but you really do want to use this sample as a guide for really understanding that rhetorical situation, because this student does a nice job of that. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the body. So Thatcher opens her eulogy to Reagan by acknowledging how much of an optimistic man he was despite all the hardships he faced. She appeals to the sorrow and sympathetic emotions within the crowd by reminding them of the daunting historical tasks he set himself, but juxtaposing that with how he pursued them with a lightness of spirit. Thatcher does this to emphasize the buoyancy and cheerfulness of his nature, but also how committed Reagan was to mending America's wounded spirit and to restore the strength of the free world. The contrasting ideas set up Thatcher's main concept that Reagan's ability to smile and keep calm under extreme pressure is one of the most significant reasons he accomplished so much as president. In addition, she portrays Reagan as a savior who reestablished America's identity as an influential and powerful country, making the crowd able to look back on all he did and appreciate how his efforts made for a better America today. Okay, so I just want to pause there, and this time, Ryan and Alex, if you don't mind, kind of saying why do you find this paragraph so effective in terms of like the rubric, the evidence, commentary, sophistication? What do you think she's doing well here?
I feel like within her evidence, whenever she like weaves the quotes instead of using like one long quote that she used, I feel like that was very effective because it shows that she's able to use her own words with the author's words to like make sure she fully understands everything.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, she does an excellent job weaving in the quotes, and that's what demonstrates like really thoughtful understanding of the text, like you said. Like she's focusing on her ideas and the evidence is just weaved in to support that analysis. So you can really see that juxtaposition with like daunting historical tasks, lightness of spirit, mending, just pulling out these really key phrases. So yeah, awesome. Ryan, anything you noticed that was really effective?
I also noticed the like weaving of the quotes, but I also noticed like kind of how the 2A student was like talking about like the like emotional aspect to it.
Yes.
With the sorrow and sympathetic emotions.
Excellent. Okay, the key here, remember, if weaving quotes is something you struggle with, that is not the end of the world, because what really, really matters the most is the actual commentary or analysis. So even if you had a quote separately, but if you had this awesome analysis in here, that's what's going to make the essay so effective. Okay, she's talking about the impact. So the contrasting ideas are setting up this main point she wanted to get across. She's portraying Reagan as a savior. She's making the crowd look back. So it really talks about impact on the audience here, how much they appreciate him for the country he's made. And as Ryan just talked about, she's talking about those emotions of the audience. So it's really deep analysis when you're thinking about what that speaker is trying to do with the audience. That's what rhetoric truly is all about. So she did a really nice job of that. Okay, so, and we see she's going chronologically here because she's talking about opening, and then she goes, as she continues the speech, Thatcher switches to a more specific strategy, comparing predictions of his presidency with actual outcomes. She puts a spotlight on how people prophesized the decline of the West, but Reagan was able to inspire America and its allies with renewed faith. When others hoped for an uneasy cohabitation with the Soviet Union, Reagan won the Cold War without firing a shot. Thatcher compares what people thought Reagan was capable of fulfilling to what he actually accomplished during his presidency. By doing so, she amplifies Reagan's victories to seem more significant, as well as to show that he went above and beyond what everyone thought was his limit. The mention of the Cold War is critical to Thatcher's purpose, seeing as it was a major concern for everyone in the United States in the 1980s. She reminds everyone that Reagan was the one who resolved potentially one of the most catastrophic threats to the American people, evoking even more appreciation and respect from her audience. Okay, so again, here you can just kind of see that level of sophistication in terms of thinking about the rhetorical situation very deeply. right? Why this is particularly persuasive to the audience, because even though we think like American citizens is her audience, I mean, it's probably going to be like older citizens who like went through Reagan's presidency and like remember the Cold War and things like that. So she really does a nice job honing in on that. She uses really, really nice, strong rhetorical verbs like amplifies and things like that. And it's okay to have a show in there, right? That's definitely not a strong rhetorical verb. But at the end of the day, obviously, it's what comes after the verb that's really important, the ideas. So she really was, could we use a better word than show? Absolutely. But that he went above and beyond what everyone thought was his limit was what she was trying to emphasize about him. So the content there is good, so we can forgive little mess ups. So never stress about a show if your ideas and your analysis of the text is really strong. Okay, Thatcher then ends the eulogy by focusing on the intelligence and skillful decisiveness of Ronald Reagan. She mentions the strong ties she had with Reagan on a business and personal level and the strict principles he had. He never wavered on them, but he did expound on them clearly and act on them decisively. Thatcher uses parallel structure in her sentences here to emphasize how much of a trustworthy and overall good person Reagan was. She adds on to his credibility as a leader by expressing her approval of his morals, using her title and reputation to boost Reagan's. I really want to emphasize this part here because, again, she was focusing on parallel structure and how it helped appeal to credibility. But if you just talked about appeal to credibility, then you did an awesome job because you're getting kind of that key thing that was going on in the text there. Right after that, Thatcher goes on to bring up the win against the Soviets once again. She touches on how he warned of the Soviet Union and their strive to military expansion, but also sensed it was being eaten away by systematic failures. While he denounced Moscow's evil empire, he also realized that a man of good might nonetheless emerge. Showing these two sides of Reagan, the strong and resilient side, but also the thoughtful and caring side, even during times of crisis, adds on to his credibility as a leader even more. This portrays him as a man who thought more with his heart than his head. By not letting the fear of the Soviet Union cloud his actions and scare him into making irrational decisions, Reagan comes off as an embodiment of the American spirit. Thatcher references this to appeal to Americans' pride and inspire the crowd to be just like Reagan, to think about the multiple truths everything holds and not back away from problems. Okay, so just to kind of pause again here, you see some really strong analysis. This paragraph is longer, and I want to stress that because there were a couple more quotes used, which is what makes it longer, because remember, all of those quotes that you use, then you want to have even more commentary and analysis. So the key part is right here, just talking about kind of the impact she wanted to show about Reagan on this personal level and how he dealt with the Soviet Union. So here, really thinking about why she made those choices. He comes off as the embodiment of the American spirit to appeal to the audience's pride and inspire them to be like him. So it does a really nice job here of, again, kind of taking this appeal to credibility, showing what he did, and why she made that particular choice. Oh my goodness, the conclusion's only a sentence. That's totally fine. Never sweat a conclusion here in a rhetorical analysis. All right, ultimately, throughout Thatcher's eulogy, she tries to create a sense of appreciation for Reagan, and she honors him by reminding everyone of all he did for this country's spirit and safety. Okay, short, to the point. Don't stress if you have a minute to go and you're like, I gotta tie it all up. Just write a sentence and you're good. So yeah, so this essay is very effective, would score super highly on the rubric. So again, yours doesn't have to match it exactly. There's a lot of variation with writing, especially in terms of picking out the rhetorical choices. You want to make sure the quality and thoughtfulness of analysis is at the same level and that you understood the rhetorical situation, just like the student is able to convey in her writing. So use it kind of as a guide for that. Okay, so now that we've kind of taken a look at that, we're going to look at the College Board one, sample 2B, and just see how it's maybe not quite as effective. It's still good, still does a good job of understanding the text, but it's just not quite at the same level. So Margaret Thatcher, a close worker of Ronald Reagan, wrote a powerful, respectful, and emotional eulogy that described the passion and work ethic that was displayed by the great president. She lists descriptive examples of accomplishments that he achieved. She uses figurative language to make light of the difficult tasks that he faced without making their value decrease. And she also uses repetition and short sentences. She uses a plentiful amount of details in this eulogy, which enables her to express the honor for his vigorous actions and decisions. She describes the compassion and emotion he has in order to express the ways in which he made a great president. Okay, so this intro is also really strong, very effective. It just doesn't go quite as in depth in terms of the rhetorical situation, thinking about the audience as much or the context as much. It still does a really nice job thinking about the purpose and the rhetorical choices, but it's just a little less sophisticated. Very strong, just less sophisticated. In the first sentence of the eulogy, she repeats the word great. Thatcher does this in order to emphasize the extent of how truly great he was. Okay, so here's an example of why maybe this isn't as good. You can see that's kind of like obvious or a little like she's repeating the word great to emphasize how great he was. Like, I mean, it's true, but it's just not as like thoughtful or of insightful as of an analysis, even though it's still accurate. By repeating this simple word, she lists all of the ways he was and also the amount of which she respects him. She continues on by quickly and efficiently listing the major key examples of accomplishments he achieved. She does not give descriptions of these, yet in her eulogy, as she only lists the broad achievements. By listing these pressures that he mended and resolved, it enables the reader to imagine the difficulties and time put into them that Ronald Reagan sacrificed. It allows the reader to grasp at the extent of his accomplishments throughout 8 years of presidency. She further discusses his personal traits, for example, his humor, in order to provide a description of himself. This description of him enables the reader to get a personal glance of what Ronald Reagan was like. It shows that even though all of the difficulties of the world that he dealt with, he continued to provide a lighthearted spirit. This example shows qualities of a great leader who composes himself during turmoil. Okay, so let's pause for a second here. Alex and Ryan, do you guys notice anything about like why this is like good, but definitely like not as effective as the other sample we looked at? We just look at that body paragraph.
I felt like she was kind of vague when she was talking about like how like the word choice or whatever he used or she used, and I felt like it wasn't as impactful compared to the other essay.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little more vague. Like there's commentary, there's analysis, so that's why it's good.
Yeah.
They definitely talk about like why Thatcher would have done that or how it impacted the reader, but it's a lot more vague. Even just the fact that they say the reader instead of like the audience, the crowd, the American citizens, shows that they don't have as good of an understanding of the rhetorical situation of the text, because like it's not it's not just the reader. She was initially giving this speech to a crowd of American citizens. So it's just not as specific, which makes it fall a little bit short. Ryan, was there anything else you noticed that maybe wasn't as effective in this essay as in the other one?
I guess kind of the same thing that like Alex was saying, where like it was like vague and stuff.
Yeah, definitely a lot more vague, which is what it comes down to. But one thing, again, this is still good. So if this is what your essay looks like, you should feel proud. This is a good scoring essay. It's just not like a top scoring essay. So this one is still good. You can kind of notice they actually talked about some of the same things. Even though these are two very different students, they noticed her emphasizing this difference between like the struggles he went through, but how he was very lighthearted in how he pursued them, and how much he was able to accomplish amidst difficulties in his presidency. So they had some similar ideas. One was just executed at a much deeper, more specific level. Okay, Margaret Thatcher shows the reader a personal side of the eulogy when she calls him Ronnie. This simple nickname allows the reader to see the close relationship that they had. By using this, it shows the depth of their conversations and how well she knew him. It signifies how accurate the information she expresses is and allows the reader to trust her. Her use of a personal quote by him connects the audience to the piece. The context of the quote shows how hard of a fighter Reagan was and that the compassion that he had during his lifetime. Oh. No, where I just went there. The compassion he had during his lifetime. She also utilizes the figurative language as she states, it's invited enemies out of their fortress and turned them into friends. This language specifies how far away his enemies were from his opinions and how much they differed in opinions, yet he was still capable of engaging with them and resolving conflict. He solved problems efficiently, and this figurative language proves solely this. This recognition of his talents as president shows the honor that she holds for him. Thatcher also uses short sentences in order to describe the actions that he made. This enables her to list many and show their significance of each. Each short sentence that she provides in this eulogy is appreciation toward Ronald Reagan and the respect that she has toward each of the actions he performed. So this paragraph, again, it's really good. What I really like the beginning of it when it talks about how she, I hope that some of you wrote about this in your essay, that she uses a couple strategies to show how close they were on a personal level, using a personal quote from him or calling him Ronnie to show like their closeness and relationship. I think that's a really important observation in terms of the rhetoric. But again, where it falls a little bit short is kind of they talk about why Thatcher used it. So they focus on speaker, but they don't focus on audience a ton. It just says it connects the audience to the piece. But you could have gone so much deeper with that. Like the fact that she had such a close relationship and she wanted to share that, how might that impact the audience? I think there could have been a lot more analyzing going on there before jumping into the next device of figurative language. So kind of, again, why this essay is like good but not great is it's kind of focusing more on like, let me come up with more and more things without going as in depth in terms of the commentary and analysis. So then she jumps to like the figurative language and then jumps to another strategy even listing more things here. So again, it's good. There's good commentary about why Thatcher was making certain choices, but it could be a lot more specific and in-depth in terms of how that impacts the particular audience. Okay, Margaret Thatcher uses, you also might notice, I don't know if I'm the only one noticing this, but there's no transitions in her body paragraphs, so it's just like each one feels like a new, like there's no like next or then she goes on, not even a little anything. Margaret Thatcher uses a myriad of tactics in order to show the honor and appreciation that she holds for Ronald Reagan. She uses repetition to recognize the qualities of the great president and to emphasize what she described. She uses a nickname in order to show the personal connection with the reader and also to provide an informal tone to the piece. Her descriptive examples also describe and express the pressure that he faced and the accomplishments that he achieved. Okay, so notice how much longer this conclusion was. But what is the conclusion doing? What did she do in the conclusion?
She's kind of summarizing it, which you don't really want to do because you've already like talked about it, so you don't kind of want to repeat yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mostly like, it's not terrible. If you have 10 extra minutes, you've already done such an amazing essay. Sure, summarize the whole thing, but like it's more when you only have 40 minutes to write it, you wouldn't want your conclusion and summarizing what you've already talked about to be where you're spending your time. You want to spend your time on those body paragraphs doing a nice specific analysis And then your conclusion it can be 1 or 2 sentences just to tie everything together. You don't have to repeat those devices that you've already mentioned in your thesis and then analyzed more deeply in your body paragraphs. You don't have to say them again. So again, this is a good essay. If you're at this point right now, you should feel really proud. That means you're already in place to write a good essay. So all you have to do in these next 4 weeks of class is work from moving and building upon that good essay that you're writing to get closer and closer and closer to that great level of rhetorical analysis. Okay, so this is where I'm going to leave you guys on your own, because I want you to be able to now go into your own writing. So go back and reread. It's good that now you've been away from it for a minute. Go back and compare it to your own to try to score yourself on that rubric. Okay, did you earn that thesis point? Okay, did you get some of those evidence and commentary points? Do you think maybe you got all 4 of those points? Did you potentially earn the sophistication point by very thoughtfully understanding that rhetorical situation, or noticing some complexities, or writing very eloquently? And then just reflect. The biggest thing, I don't want you guys to stress if you're at this 2B level, right? You're not great yet. I don't want you to stress about that for a couple of reasons. Number 1, you still have a month to go. Number 2, you wrote this in 40 minutes. Writing a good essay in 40 minutes is pretty freaking impressive. Okay, so be gracious with yourself and just think about okay, what did I do well and what do I really need to work on? And then if you start to notice spelling errors, typos, things like that, just be mindful. You do have spelling and grammar check, so be using that. That's a really nice advantage you guys have in being able to type your essays this time around instead of handwriting them, is you really shouldn't have many grammatical errors, because you can have Grammarly on your computer. You can have your spelling and grammar check on Google Docs. So just utilize that as you go back through. And then, yeah, that Google form is right here linked in the slideshow, and it's attached to the assignment on Classroom. That's the only thing you're going to turn into me today once you're done writing. And then the last thing I want to say, sorry, I'm totally done and taking too long. But the last thing I want to say, Alex and Ryan, specifically to you two, and then of course I hope lots of people are watching the video later, is if you want to talk about your writing more specifically, I really am available so much for writing conferences, and I really think that is the most beneficial way to grow as a writer, is to talk about yours specifically one-on-one, and show you areas where you could take that analysis a step further, or little tweaks you might be able to make to your writing. So yeah, let me know if you would like to sign up for a conference. Just shoot me an email. I have 2 today during office hours, but that still gives me a little more time. So feel free to pop in or send me an email to schedule one for any time next week. Okay. Alex, Ryan, you guys are amazing. I hope you all have a great weekend.
Ew.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, of course. Take care. Be well.